You're listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. To support this podcast, go to nakedbiblepodcast.com and click on the support link in the upper right-hand corner. If you're new to the podcast and Dr. Heiser's approach to the Bible, click on New Start Here at nakedbiblepodcast.com.
Welcome to the Naked Bible Podcast, episode 468. Miqlat. I'm the layman, Trey Strickland, and I'm joined today with two people from Miqlat. That would be Greg Lyle and Drina Heiser. How y'all doing?
Hi. Excellent. There. How you doing, Trey?
Awesome. Well, I'm going to let y'all introduce yourselves. I guess, Greg, we can start with you since we all know Drina. But, Greg, if you want to go ahead and introduce the audience to you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, hi. This is Greg Lyle. And, you know, one of the things I'm supposed to talk about is how did I meet Mike? And so the story kind of goes back, and it's probably very similar. Trey and I had a conversation like this years back, but our routes are a little bit similar in the sense that I'm one of these Christians that always wanted to know my Bible and wanted to understand it, and I always tried to figure out some of these difficult passages of Scripture and just get a good grasp of how it all fit together. So one day I just decided, all right, once and for all, I'm going to solve this Genesis 6 problem with sons of God and Nephilim and all that weird stuff. So what did I do? As just a regular church-going, sit-in-the-pew Christian that didn't know much? Well, where else would you go, Trey? You would go to Christian Middle Earth. So I decided to jump into the internet and find once and for all if I can solve this problem with the sons of God, the Nephilim, Genesis 6, and all this weird stuff out there. And I don't remember how, but I stumbled across this short little piece written by this guy named Mike Heiser. And he explained why the shape of the word Nephilim cannot mean fallen ones. It had to mean giants. And his argument just was so logical. It just made so much sense. So it's just like, okay, this is interesting. Let's go see if I can, find out who this guy is and find out more material, get some more material from him. So the next thing I did is I think I stumbled upon this old grainy website from a UFO conference of all things. And I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was called Genesis 6, Sons of God, Daughters of Men, hybridization, whatever it was. And so I listened to that, and it was impossible to watch because it was such a bad video quality. But he walked you through this whole, quote unquote, Deuteronomy 32, 8, and 9 worldview. And once again, I just like, this is amazing material. And one of the first questions I had is like, how come I've never heard this before? And I've read my Bible, cover to cover multiple times by this point. I thought I knew my Bible pretty well. I think I knew my church tradition pretty well. And it was just like, wow, I've never heard this before. So that just got me on this journey. Then I went and discovered that he had a website, the Naked Bible. I think it was just drmsh.com back then. And then you had a Naked Bible piece of it. And then you had, different, the Paleo Babel part of it. And I gobbled up everything. And same thing, reading through some of his old posts, I always love to use the Romans 5:12 thing. It was such a great series where you had, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 different posts on Romans 5:12 and the interaction in the comment section between him and people debating him and asking questions. And it was just so eye-opening to where it helped me understand my Bible better than I ever had in my entire life. And it connected all these dots, and it made it all make sense. Okay. And then one day I just decided, all right, I read the little link on, don't send me an email. Here's my life. And, if you send me an email, I'm not going to respond. But I'm like, what the heck? I'm going to do it anyway. So I just shot him an email, and I just said, look, you got to quit your job and do this full time. I mean, I was of the belief that, every Christian should read Unseen Realm. And back then it was the myth that was true. So I read the draft book, and I'm like, oh, this is just the most amazing book I've ever read in Christianity. And And his first response is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that. But we just kind of kept emailing back and forth. And then one year, I think it was 2014, he's like, hey, I'm interested in this idea. Maybe we could meet at the annual ETS conference in San Diego, because at the time I was living in the San Diego area. So we met in 2014, and he basically said, hey, all right, let's, go ahead and run with it. And so I basically outsourced it to a group that did all the work to form the nonprofit. And that was the birth of Miqlat, with the idea of like, let's build it and see if they come. And the idea you need enough financial support for Mike to quit his job. So the whole goal this whole time was, let's see if we can get enough financial support for Mike to quit his job. And, years ago, we were all together at, Fern and Audrey's place. And we were all, pestering him. Mike, you got to quit your job. There's enough revenue so far. I think we could do this. And ultimately it happened, maybe a little bit too late. If there's any regret I had, is I didn't pester him hard enough to quit his job earlier so we could have more of his content. But that's the history of Miqlat. So I think we were finalized in 2015, and it's just been going ever since. And, through the help of the support of listeners, up to the Naked Bible podcast, the readers of his book, the readers of his blogs. We can't thank you enough. We had a good run while it lasted. Unfortunately, the Lord took Mike quicker than we would like. He's better off as a result, but at the same time, he kind of asked us to keep this thing going. So that's the history of Miqlat.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I probably pestered him, Drina, close your ears, to quit his job since day one. I never let up. So I remember that. And boy, I never let up on that. Come on, Mike, we can do it. We can do it just quick, because I agree with you. I think, him doing this full time was, I think that was his destiny. But Drina, we all know, we all basically have the same story like Greg does of how we discovered Mike. It's the same, but yours is completely different than ours. And at the memorial service, it was great to actually physically be at the church where y'all got married and y'all met and all that fun stuff. Would you mind taking us back what your impression is how you first met Mike, rather than how the rest of us met Mike? Because it's a completely different story than ours. Would you mind doing that?
Oh, sure. It sure is different, for sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Drina, and Mike and I were married for over 35 years, but we had dated and took a short break for 6 months and got back together. But we've been together probably 39 years, going on 40. So it's been a real blessing, and it's been fun and adventuresome, and I've learned so much along the way. And I know he's learned so much along the way through my eyes. So we were a really good team together. We really balanced each other out. So it was great. Honestly, and we have 4 kids that love their dad and loved being around him, and they never, didn't want to be here. It's just great. So we were really blessed in that way. So when I first met Mike, it was a summer between my sophomore and my junior year of university. And my parents, during that year of my sophomore year, had changed churches. And so they went to this little church where Dave Burgraff was the pastor and Wayne Burgraff was the youth pastor. And they were really young at the time. And so my sister and I walked in with my parents, and my dad took me over to this young man that was sitting on the pew all by himself, reading his Bible. And he said, Mike, I'd like to introduce you to my daughters. This is Drina, and this is Tammy. And he looked up and said, hi. And then he went right back down to reading his Bible. And I was like, what just happened? Oh, goodness. So we did not have a real connection at that point. But what did happen was we were serving the youth at a camp for a week together. And I didn't really know him that well, but I was so impressed by him at the 1 week camp that we were counselors at. And we ended up playing Foursquare together, of all things. And I was just so impressed by him. And so when we got home, I had just really prayed, to the Lord, that I really wanted him to ask me out. And finally, one Wednesday after church, he came over to me and asked me out. And we went to Dairy Queen. He came to my house. We talked for 3 hours, left in the wee hours of the morning. And that is how it started. I was very intrigued with his knowledge, his brain, his kindness, his willingness to listen. So that's how we started dating. And then we dated for about 1.5 years and broke up for 6 months. And then he came back and decided, he had temporary insanity at that point. So we got back together and then we got married. So that's my story with Mike. And then it's been an adventure ever since. So I just wanted to thank each and every one of you that have supported Mike and I, and especially me and my family, during this 2 years of just, trials and, sadness. And y'all have been so kind. And you've been like friends and brothers and sisters. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, Drina. Well, I just want to comment on how brave Mike was when he first approached you and asked you out. Knowing Mike, just the fact that he had enough guts and bravery to do that, I applaud him for that, because, that takes a lot of guts to do that. Go ask a girl, and hearing the stories about him, how nervous he was and all that. So I give him even more props, actually following through and asking you out. So hats off to him.
Yeah. He even told me, he goes, I don't know why I did that, because that is something I would never do. I said, it was the Lord. I prayed.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah. So, and that's what makes it, that's true bravery right there. Cause if you know him, that is something he would not normally do. The fact that he did that, is the definition of what it means to be brave. And I think Mike was brave with all the stuff that he did, a trailblazer in trying to bring the scholarship down to the layman, and everything that he wrote about, talked about. In my opinion, bravery is probably a word that's not used often enough, but it certainly needs to be. And your story even proves that even more so. So that's what I think. Yeah. Well, can you tell us about some of Mike's ideas? I know you're working on a seminary on a flash drive that you've mentioned, and we would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, let me tell you the story of that. Now, this is not new to me. Mike has been saying this for over 10 years, I think, even before Miqlat was even a twinkle in Greg's eye. It was something that Mike had talked about, but we never really sat down and planned it out. So 2 weeks after Mike passed, Carla Adcox, who is the executive director and president of Awakening School of Theology, where Mike, of course, had his 2-year course developed in that school. And we were just having a lunch talking, and she said, Mike, mentioned to me about a year ago before he passed, we had this meeting, and he talked about this dream of his to do, he called it a seminary on a thumb drive. But, we call it a flash drive now. But and I said, he told you about that? And she said, yeah, he even sent me an email with all the courses that he would like, the titles of them, and who he would like to teach them. And his dream of it. I'm like, you were kidding. So she showed it to me on her phone. And I said, you know what? Miqlat has basically done all the translation work that we can do for the supernatural book and What Does God Want? if you guys want to ever see how many translations are, they go to Miqlat.org under resources, and you'll see, the dozens of languages now that has been translated into and available for free to those people who speak those languages. So I said, that's about done, and I need something to bring to our people, our donors, so they don't think, well, that's it. What's my money going for? Is there any use anymore donating to Miqlat? And so I said, I really need, a project that was near and dear to Mike's heart and that we can partner together to do it. And so that's where it was born. And she was so excited. And I wish you could all meet Carla. She is such a brilliant marketer, a brilliant person with ideas, and then following through and getting the people in line to manifest an idea. She's so good at that. And so that's what's being done. So I will tell you, there's 12 courses. And so I just want to tell you which ones are done and then which ones are in the books and in the works, and then the ones that we hope to do by the end of this year. So the classes that are already done are Attributes of God, and Mike did that one. Then Biblical Eschatology by Dr. Justin Mass. What is the Gospel by Dr. John Phelps. Okay, the ones that are coming, Doctrine of Salvation by Dr. Ron Johnson, that was just finished last week. He came from Minnesota and taped about 3 days with Carla and the Awakening team. And then Divine Christ by Dr. Capes, The Christian and the Law by Dr. Postel. Those 3 are in the works and already scheduled. The ones that are remaining that we hope to do by the end of the year is Doctrine of the Holy Spirit, Biblical Anthropology, Doctrine of Sanctification, Doctrine of the Church, Early Church History, Old Testament Orientation course, and then a New Testament Orientation course. So when these are finished, and edited and done and ready to be packaged, they will be put together and available to anyone who wants to take it. Now, we had an initial goal of $50,000, and that just includes videoing everything, editing, and getting it ready to package. So that's in English. So we do have people that are standing by to do the subtitles for all of these courses. And once that is done, then we will be ready to distribute to these countries and, people groups that really need a good foundation of doctrine. So that's what's happening. And we're very excited about it and so thrilled that we can have this come to fruition for Mike. And I know he's looking down and he's just so happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how does this differ from what the Awakening School is currently doing? Is it accredited? Is it a separate thing? Is it part of the course, or how does that fit in?
Yeah, it is called a Certificate of Bible Doctrine. Now, some of the courses are an overlap between some things that Awakening will be using and the Certificate of Biblical Doctrine. Some of the courses will only be available for the Certificate of Biblical Doctrine. So it is all doctrine. So it's all going to be packaged in 12 courses. As of right, I know there are talks with some of our seminaries that are already partnered with the 2-year program of Awakening School that Mike did. I know there are some interest in giving some credit for that, but we don't know the specifics of that yet. So the idea is just to get it done and to get it out to the masses that really need a good foundation.
And is the goal to be able to purchase those flash drives, I assume?
Well, what we are asking is, and Carla and I just talked about this, it's like, well, how can we give it for free and then, ask some people to pay for it? So what we're asking is anybody like in the U.S. or Canada that can, really afford to donate something towards their use of the program, that's what we're going to be asking, because that will help, just offset some of the costs of, buying flash drives and, just the mass production of them and then sending them out. So that's what we're asking. We're not going to say that there is a specific money amount. We just are asking for a donation.
Okay, perfect. Looking forward to it. And you're expecting hopefully first part of next year to be completely done. Is that correct?
Yes. Carla said she's just looking on being completely recorded and videoed by the end of this year. And then hopefully by the middle of next year, it will be ready. The English and hopefully Spanish or Portuguese, because we do have a Portuguese translator who is standing by. She is ready to do that. And so we're hoping to have, a few languages, some of the more common ones done immediately.
Okay, great. Greg, can you speak about some of the other opportunities Miqlat is looking at?
One thing that we actually just recently kind of came up with, and it was basically because an existing donor came to Drina and said, "Hey, I have this idea of funding a scholarship." And then basically, while we were talking to our lawyers just to help change some of the paperwork, because back to Mike's phone call to me in January when he said, "Hey, basically, I'm in hospice. This is the situation. Here's what I want to do with Miqlat." Drina already runs the nuts and bolts of the ministry. She takes care of all the operational stuff, and she knows everything. I want Drina to take my role as president of Miqlat and keep this going forever. I want my content to stay alive in perpetuity. And so we were talking to our lawyer, and it just dawned on me. It's just like, okay, we really need to do this the idea of having scholarships where guys that were inspired by Mike that want to go down the path in a PhD program to do something, to work on a topic that would, in the same vein as what Mike was all about, then we would love to help sponsor some of those guys, depending on how much money we could raise. And whether it's, 2 or 3 guys, we give them partial money, or one guy, we give him, his entire financial needs met to get his PhD, or if it's 20 guys and we give each guy a little bit of money along the way. And the idea is that we were thinking of is maybe have some kind of an application form, and then have on our board, Ron Johnson's on our board, for example. So we would have other biblical scholars kind of go through the applications and try to figure out who do we want to give money to. And the neat thing about that is we would say, hey, we're going to help you through your PhD program. At the same time, we would like you to help contribute content to Miqlat. Okay, my whole goal with creating Miqlat in the very beginning was like, look, Mike, we could do this, and you could just build your own little think tank, so to speak, where you could be the Old Testament scholar, you could hire a New Testament scholar, maybe you can hire Second Temple literature scholar, and just have a bunch of guys cranking out content. So I would still like that to keep going from that perspective. Unfortunately, obviously, Mike's gone, but we can have other biblical scholars continuing to crank out content for Miqlat in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's blog posts, whether it's videos, it doesn't matter. So that is that's one of the things that another thing that we plan on doing, beyond the flash drive. Mike also told me that last conversation that we had in I think it was late January, he still has more content that, is going to be released, or Drina knows more about that. And then Drina just told me the other day about, he was halfway done with a book, and then Ron Johnson's going to finish the rest of it, or did finish the rest of it. So
he didn't finish it. I just sent him some of the chapters that Mike did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's in the works as well. Yeah. Drina, you could speak to that one.
Okay. Mike had several projects that he wanted to get done before he passed. So there's several big ones that he did get done, which amazing how he did it when he was so sick, but he did it. And so the doctrine book, it kind of follows, it's a more simple doctrine book. It kind of follows like, what does God want? So after what does God want, there's this doctrine book that Mike was working on. So it'd be palatable for the non-church, a person that doesn't know the Lord, or even a person who does know the Lord that wants to, up the Bible study. So it's something that's going to be simple to read and to follow, but it has really good content in it. So Mike was able to finish half of it. And so I am good friends with Ron, and we just had dinner last week. And I had mentioned the doctrine book to him before, so he brought it up again, and he said, I'm on board. And so what the process is going to be is Mike's already done half of it, and he wrote the preface. And so what the book is going to look like, it's going to go between Mike and Ron. So Mike will have the first chapter, and then Ron will have the second. So every other chapter, the guys they'll have a different voice. Because I was a bit afraid of having the first whole section be Mike's voice, and then the last section be Ron's. You could really be able to tell the difference. And so I had the idea of mixing it up so, you get the different voices all throughout the book. And so Ron is on board for that, and he is excited to do it. So I just sent him a couple of the done chapters and the whole outline. And so he's looking through that right now. Oh, can I talk about the newsletter?
Sure, go ahead.
For those of you who have subscribed to the newsletter, there's over 15,000 of you. You might have noticed I put out a newsletter last week, and it was all me, and it was intimidating because Mike was one that always wrote it, and then I would just format it, put it into the email, and send it out, and maybe add some personal pictures and stuff like that. But it was a newsletter that I put out in my own voice, and so my goal is to do one every month just to update you all on what is going on in Miqlat and in our lives, and to bring some other voices on that can maybe write an article or introduce an old video of Mike's that nobody has seen, or it's very rare that someone has seen it. Just stuff like that, just to keep in contact with you all and let you know what's going on. So just be looking for those, hopefully once a month.
All right, Greg, any final thoughts from you?
The only thought I have is more of just a thank you to the community. Thank you for supporting us for this long. And I also just want to ask you, don't give up just because Mike's gone. Mike, once again, that phone call, it was humbling. It was sad at the same time, in the sense that, all right, we're truly losing Mike. But he kind of tasked me with keep this thing going. I want Miqlat to survive forever. And so I'm just asking everybody, please, if you're a financial supporter, please continue to support us. And if you've never supported Miqlat before, or if you're new to Mike Heiser's content, then, we ask you to join the team, so to speak. And that's it. Once again, thank you. And Mike was so thrilled to have this happen. And he was the one guy that, and Trey, you can appreciate this. Mike hated the celebrity preacher aspect of anything in Christianity. He didn't want to be that guy. He just wanted to kind of keep a low profile. But Mike became that anyway. He didn't like it, but so many people have appreciated his work. And just listening, for example, to your recent podcast with Memorializing Mike, it was amazing how many people have, in a sense, he's kind of saved their faith. And, that is just absolutely amazing. We want to keep that going. So we want to keep his material alive and well forever for the body of Christ.
Drina, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I love Naked Bible podcast so much. And so if you love it too and you want to support Naked Bible podcast, that is separate from Miqlat. So you could go to nakedbiblepodcast.com and donate there. If you want to support this initiative, the seminary initiative and scholarships for scholars, you can go to miqlat.org and you can donate there. But either place is helping the kingdom. It's furthering the gospel of Jesus. And so we're thrilled wherever you decide to financially put your money.
Okay, well, with that, I want to thank Greg Lyle and Drina Heiser for coming on and giving us a future glimpse into what Miqlat has coming up for us. I'm excited about that seminary on a flash drive for sure. And again, if you want to donate, which we encourage everybody to go to miqlat.org, that's miqlat.org, to help some of these initiatives and keep Mike's content to live on forever. Please go there and donate and help them further achieve Mike's wishes. And we appreciate Greg and Drina for coming on. Thank you so much. And with that,
thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to thank everybody else for listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. To support this podcast, visit www.nakedbibleblog.com. To learn more about Dr. Heiser's other websites and blogs, go to www.drmsh.com.